Okay, so I'll just say right now, for the next couple, you're probably going to see Rob in these because the power went out in my house, and again, these are shot early, so by the time you see this, you'll probably know the Nostalgia Critic was late. It was the Lord of the Rings one.
So we're just filming 3 of these in a row.
Yeah, we're just doing a couple of these in a row. I'm like, the power just came on, but I'm still importing the footage of Lord of the Rings.
I love this season. I will totally try to get in as many episodes of this season as possible.
Yeah, so for the next year, we're just running through avatars right now while I'm importing the Lord of the Rings footage. So with that said, we have the Headband. Kind of a weird title, the more I think about it.
That was the name of my first garage band.
Which is very obviously Footloose. I think that would be better.
Oh, I see. So if I say it's like Star Wars, you're like, well, but it's its own thing. It's its own thing.
No, this is clearly Footloose.
Okay.
This is clearly Footloose.
But with firebending.
I mean, it's a lot smarter than Footloose. I don't care much
what do you got
Footloose.
against Footloose?
Oh, Footloose is fucking stupid. and so,
yeah, but the kids love it.
I mean, hell, right down to the 80s sound effects. Though, I mean, even though that's more Speed Racer here, but
I was gonna go with Inspector Gadget.
Okay, it's like we just get rid of the wah-wah in the first season, but now we're bringing back all the Inspector Gadget. Yeah, just the. I'm like, come on. I fucking hate that shit.
No respect
I know it's the
for
style.
the classics.
I know it's the style. I just fucking hate it. It's so annoying.
The more classic 80s sound effects you can get in any cartoon, the better.
How much funnier would it be without those dumbass sound effects? And I know it's the thing. I know that's the anime style. I know that's just how it works. It just drives me nuts.
Oh, Doug.
Oh,
Doug.
Okay. So we have this episode called The Headband, which is actually, again, if you were to tell me where do you think this season was going to go, where do you think the next episode's going to go, I would not have predicted that. And it's actually a pretty clever turn. Because at first you don't suspect, you wouldn't expect that was going to happen, but then on top of that, it's actually kind of a smart move, because as he says, he's actually finding out about the Fire Nation. He's
and basically hiding right out in the open, which I love.
So,
and I love the idea of a 112-year-old kid who has all of these superpowers just sitting around in school, and like my favorite line is like, oh, you must be one of those popular kids.
I've heard so much about.
Just like, because like nothing phases him. It's like the kid tries to kick his ass and Aang's like, okay, like, he just dodges a bit because he knows like he could totally kill this guy in an instant.
And again, I like those instances where you have someone who's really kind, really nice, kind of a pacifist. I mean, he will fight when he needs to, but will try to avoid violence, and he's actually becoming more popular than the really tough, violent kids because he's just smarter. And
didn't fight him either. He just dodged him.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I love how that can actually get him more friends and make him more popular, by just being really smart and doing his own thing. For the most part, it's a good episode. I gotta sit through some of that stuff where, again, I kind of go, oh, that's for the kids, okay. Like Sokka and Katara dressing up like the parents.
Oh, come on, that was having
the dance at the end. I'm like, come on, is this like prom night now? I mean, this is straight up Footloose. And then the grown-ups coming in saying, oh, most unorthodox and stuff. But it's done well enough. I mean, it works well enough. Not quite to the point where I'm like, this is unbelievably stupid. But at the same time, I'm going, this is kind of lame.
It's for 10-year-olds.
I know,
and it's a good 2 hours shorter than Happy Feet. This did it in 24 minutes. It's economical.
But you did. I don't know. It's good to have an episode like this because, again, it's nice to see Aang come in and he teaches these kids who are not allowed to have much of a childhood. He gives them a little bit of a childhood, and he allows them to rebel a little bit too. At a point where kids need to rebel, and it's important, and that's why I think the episode does work. It's just, again, you have to sort of sit through this stuff like, oh, we're doing that, huh? Okay, oh, that cliche, all right, well, it's not long.
I think there's more going on in this episode than you're giving it credit for.
I mean, it's good, and it works. And honestly, I don't know what I would fix if I had to go in and fix it. It's sort of like, I acknowledge it kind of no, I acknowledge it needs to be here. It's I don't know. I don't know what I think about it. The stuff with Zuko's good. It's still really good. Not so surprisingly, Uncle Iroh doesn't talk that much.
Honestly, it is funny because in retrospect now, because we know what happened to Mako, it makes sense, but It's a really brilliant move.
It still really works.
It really works as a story that he would give him the silent treatment.
It's horrible to
and
say,
it also gives you a buffer zone so that you have a few episodes to not listen to Mako's original voice. That way you're not going to be like, whoa, what the hell? Totally different. Because the guy that got to replace him, he was somebody I think who was doing bit roles in the show already, does a really good impression. It's actually, like, really good.
I haven't heard it yet, but...
You probably have. I'm almost positive because Mako died in somewhere near the end of the second season.
Okay, so he did a few pickups before.
I'm almost positive this guy did a few pickups.
There's a lot of times in the second
really close,
season I'm like...
But it's still just slightly different enough, because how do you get a voice like Mako's? It's just,
there's a lot of times where I was saying that... either he was sick or in a different mood or had a cold or something, or this is a different voice actor.
Yeah.
But all the time,
it's just
I still bought it
enough,
fine
though, because you just can't replicate a 60-something-year-old Japanese man.
But
it's just different enough that by giving you that gap, you'll forget, particularly if you're watching this weekly. I mean, we're watching it daily.
Yeah.
Or I've watched it daily now. It gives you enough of a gap that you kind of forgot exactly how his voice sounds, so you don't flip out.
It's horrible to say,
it's
but
a really good impression on top of that.
Mako kind of died at just the right time in terms of this show, because you have, Zuko.
If you're going to
him.
die, and we never want to see that
of course
happen,
we don't.
If that was going, it's clear that was happening no matter what, and it's fortuitous that it happened when it did.
Yes, because he has...
And not in the middle of season 1 or so.
Yeah, because Zuko has betrayed his uncle, and his uncle is giving him the silent treatment, and... usually I'm not a fan of the silent treatment, but you kind of understand it here, because the uncle has done everything, has given everything
he's pissed.
For his nephew. And
I think he's,
within a millisecond, he
I can't even say pissed, he's disappointed. I think he's just disappointed to the fact.
Yeah,
to the point that he's like, there is nothing I can do.
He feels like it's his failure as well.
Yeah.
And Zuko comes asking for more advice, and it's like...
Which is still based on capturing the Avatar, which is what I love, which is why I don't think he'll ever answer him. He's like, I need your help, Uncle. I need your help. And he's not answering because he knows, well, all you want is help capturing Aang, and I'm not in.
Well, on top of that, I think he finally realizes, too, because the uncle would never leave him alone. He gave him his space for a bit, but even then he still followed. Now it's like, no, you need to face this alone. You made your choice. Now you really have to think about what you have and what you're going to do about it, because, he's given everything for him. And I think the scene...
Your grave, buddy. Dig it.
And I really like that. I really like the moment when, Zuko, he turns around and he leaves. And again, like what you say, it didn't show the anger, it shows the disappointment. After he leaves, he just has that one tear flow down his face. And... honestly, that's just
you
as
made
powerful
Mako cry. Damn it, Zuko.
That's just as powerful as anything you could have written for him. So whether or not it was intentional to have him be quiet originally, or they did because he passed,
brilliant.
It ties in beautifully. So I thought it was very well done.
The episode itself, I thought it was really brilliant, because this is something you don't see when you have most cartoon shows with an enemy.
Yeah, they try to give the enemy...
You don't get to see children on the other side. You don't get to see their daily lives. You don't get to see the fact that they're being indoctrinated with cell phone calls interrupting my great speech.
I'm listening.
Are you finished?
I'm finished. Continue.
Anyway. You don't get to see these things. I mean, there's a great lesson here about basically understanding the person that you're calling an enemy. And what Aang's learning, he's like, these kids are exactly like me. In some ways, they're worse off because they're just being fed this horse shit, from a very early age, and they can't dance, they can't have any sort of sense of fun, they're trained to just worship the state, and Sokka and Katara have such a hatred for the Fire Nation. I mean, in her case, that's played out even more in later episodes. But Sokka, too, he's always like, those fire-breathing monsters, those, You know, and I think Aang's proving a very important point. He's like, they're not monsters at all. You know, they're just kids. They're being trained to be monsters.
They play with this a little bit in that Jet episode where they're going to break the dam. They're going to drown that neighborhood full of, no soldiers, just families of the Fire Nation. And they stand up and said, no, this is not right. These people have done nothing. These are people just trying to live their lives. But I agree. We haven't actually gone into a point where we just see the kids of the Fire Nation. You know, sometimes we'll see a family here or there, or like a fair or something, but this is specifically
and not
the
just
kids, and they're like any other
how
kids.
The Fire Nation comes to be. You know, the lesson is very clear, is that these kids all start out normal and then basically go through boarding school hell and come out these nationalistic, jingoistic, fire-tossing maniacs, you know, which is what Sokka's always saying. So I thought that was really great. The dance thing's kind of silly, but they admit that. I think one of them says in the beginning, I think it was Sokka, that just sounds silly. But I think it's also proving a point, which is so much of what, and this comes into play later, so much of what Aang is being instructed to do is basically kill the Fire Lord, take out the Fire Nation, this and that, and he's figuring out, well, maybe there's another way. You know, maybe I can plant the seeds, of revolution in these kids. Maybe if they can just learn to cut loose a little, maybe something will spread. Maybe it won't.
There is, and stuff like this is important because a mistake that so many people make, especially when they're emotional, and I make it too, and I know you make it too, and we've all made it, is that, outside of just like necessarily a prejudice or something, when you look at a group of people, like, people who like this or people that like that, they're all this. Well, they say they want this, but really they want that. When you get down to it, there's no way to properly capture that because it's always going to be nothing but a ton of people with a ton of different opinions, and there may be patterns, but they're still individual people. And when you say one group wants this, one group wants that one, you can't ever sum up exactly what one group is, because it's always going to be a ton of different people, and it's hard to sum up even what one person is. So episodes like this, I think, are very, very important, because, as you said, it doesn't just place them in one group, and they are all one
This is one of the most important episodes in the season. And that's why, we can joke about it, like, oh, it's just Footloose, and but you get past that one point, and there's a whole ton of stuff going on.
I know, I wish...
And it gives you a history of the Fire Nation.
And I know it needs to be silly, and I get that. I wish it could have been more silly, like some of the other episodes have been silly. Like, there's a funnier silly in there somewhere, and then maybe a touch more of a clever silly, but this is still a good silly.
The other interesting thing it does is it gives us a sense of Fire Nation culture, which I didn't mention in the last episode, but one thing I noticed, and I could be wrong about this, but it seems like the show is drawing on 4 kind of specific cultures for each of the elements. Waterbending to me is very Inuit, Eskimo, Siberian, sort of shaman base, the North. The Airbenders seem very Tibetan Buddhist to me, maybe Shaolin monks. The Earth Kingdom to me, I didn't mention this in the last episode, but it's very Chinese to me. Like, right down to the bureaucracy that's trying to keep everything secret. That just strikes me as just being very sort of Chinese in nature. The design, the size of it, the fact that it's right in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Fire Nation, maybe I'm wrong on this. Whenever I look at them, and particularly the indoctrination, Japanese. Like, when I look at it with their navy and the whole indoctrination
the honor,
aspect,
the focus on honor,
and the aspect of the schools remind me of what was going on basically like in fascist Japan, the 30s, and
and let's emphasize we like the Japanese.
Oh no, I love the
no problem with the Japanese at all.
It's a part of history that happened though, and I think they're actually kind of referencing that. Well, what nation has not had a dark time, in their history? So, but they're all drawing from certain time periods and I think they're trying to correlate, what the Fire Nation is doing with what pre-war or World War II Japan was looking like, where you had all of these kids being, taught things like for the good of the state, and the Germans were doing the same thing, but this is
I was going to say, that this seems sort of like a Japanese, but sort of emphasis on, like, Nazi Germany, honestly. It's, I'm sure even Japan, the darkest stages, have gone through something similar, but it's like, I read a lot of Nazism in it.
Well, they were doing the same thing. It was all about the state is the highest honor. You have to serve your country. You know, I mean, look at it. I mean, we to some extent were doing some of it too. You look at the propaganda we had at the time. You know,
Oh, sure,
spooky.
yeah.
So it just seems to be drawing a connection. I said Japanese because the Navy they have, the fact that they seem to be. I mean, you could argue that a lot of them are island nations, but that in particular, it seems to be an island nation with a very modern navy, everything's sort of technology. It just reminds me of that era in history, and the fact that it's an Asian culture. So, and
I get much more the honor,
color red.
you know, because I also think that, like, you know, the other thing I think very much is sort of like, it sounds weird, but like Klingon. I think we sort of agree too that Klingon is very Japanese too, because
there's a sort of Bushido sort of code of the samurai.
Yeah, I mean, just that emphasis on honor, that seems to be a big part. You know, Zuko is not going back for power, he's going back for honor. And he has the power and the honor, but he feels like he doesn't have the honor, something's still missing.
I'm not saying it's modern Japanese, I'm just saying, but it's tapping into those, you know, sort of cultures we've had throughout history, and they all seem Asian-based to me.
Well, and
in this world, it's, you know, so that's why I tend to think of Japan.
Here's something else.
History,
Here's something else I think is very important that I think they're playing out, with the exception of maybe the Air Kingdom, because we haven't quite seen enough of them, especially because they're essentially
You're not really
gone.
going to.
Well, essentially because they're gone now too. They're practically extinct. Is that all the nations they've shown these large problems with these nations, with the you know, with the Waterbang Nation, you sort of get this, that they are kind of sexist. They won't train women as men, women, and those are the only two places, you know, and then now that we get wiggle room there. With the Earth Nations, the cover-ups, and the government controlling everything without you even realizing it, and the secrecy. And of course, with the Fire Nation, you know, finally...
The militarism.
Yeah, the militarism, and just going too far. So it's one of those things where I do wonder if they focused at one point more on what the Air Nation or the Wind Nation, or whatever it's called,
I think the Air
is
Nations,
about. Maybe we would have seen the flaws there too.
I think it's implied, actually. Generally looking at it, it seems implied to me that the Air Nation is sort of hermit-like.
Yeah, we did get that when they were going to take him away from his friends and everything, and they would not let him be a kid. I mean, which is very debatable whether or not that was the right choice.
I think the problem is, and this is a criticism of certain sects of Buddhism or Indian Hindi philosophy, which is the concept of withdrawing from the world. Like that is a criticism sometimes levied against that sort of you know, basically those philosophies or religions, and I think that's definitely something that you could argue that may be their fatal flaw, because they're withdrawing from the world. They are pacifistic. They seem very agrarian, not that much into technology, and they get their asses handed to them.
On top of that, that episode where one of the temples is taken over by the inventor and those people and stuff, and Aang is really like, what is going on here? No, not cool. And he has to be taught that these people need to survive as well, and it's sort of, this was the original ideology that maybe they were starting to sort of turn against too. So you're right, sort of cutting yourself away from the world, you're cutting yourself away from people and helping people sometimes,
you know,
as
and
well,
there
too.
may be, since this show's drawing so much from Asian history, and there may be a correlation there, you know, between, you have the argument, you know, between the Chinese and the Tibetan Buddhists. You know, the Chinese sort of rolled right in, and now all of the Tibetan Buddhists are either living under Chinese rule or spread out in exile, you know, perhaps like what could have happened to the Air Kingdom. I don't know if that's intentional or not, you know, but you could probably make that argument.
Bottom line, what I do like is that... essentially what the show is coming down to, too, is that there's not one evil, and like, if you're on this side, evil! No. These are still people, these are still humans. It's when things are thrown out of balance through one way or another, or people wanting more or wanting less or whatever. And that's essentially what Aang is trying to do. He's trying to bring back the balance. And it's not a simple good versus evil.
And it shows you
it.
those cultures.
It
doesn't just say they're the enemy, or even if it's like we're going to make peace with the enemy. This whole episode
it all human.
Gave you a culture to attach yourself to, a culture that you're going to explore more in the rest of the series, and it makes them human. Mm-hmm. I don't see that a lot in cartoons. It drives me nuts.
No,
but
adult films.
We don't know what's going on with those stormtroopers. They may have perfectly nice family lives. But,
I guarantee, like...
Death Star blows up and that's it.
Yeah, I guarantee most of the summer films you'll see here, they're PG-13 or R. I mean, they're not going to go nearly into as much
Couldn't
humanity.
give a crap.
And they're not going to go into nearly as much humanity as this show is for families. So, yeah, again, I mean...
And in my opinion, that actually makes the family show way more adult, because it has the balls to talk about it, so...
And it has the time, it has the intelligence, it has the talent, so...
I thought it was a great episode. Fuck your Footloose comparison.
No, it's still... I never said it was bad. I just said I think some of the silly elements could have been a little funnier. So, yeah, it's still good episode. Enjoy it, and yeah, we'll just see you at the next one.